How are you doing these days? You okay? What is going on in your head? Oh, that'll be a big question then. Sometimes our mind doesn't rest, doesn't take a break. And I don't know, sometimes with me, sometimes when I try to stop thinking about something, no. I say something, say, no, you can't stop thinking. You need to keep thinking. Sometimes I can't just sleep at night. It makes us awake. And so I think everyone who is in this room, we need God at one point of our life. We need God to speak into our life. Let me read from James chapter 4, verse 7 to 10. I'll be reading from James chapter 4, verse 7 to 10. Therefore, submit to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. Lament and mourn and weep. Let your laughter be turned into mourning, and let your joy to gloom. Humble yourself in the sight of the Lord, and he will lift you up. The area where I really want to bring it out today is that draw near to you, and he will draw near to you. Like I said, in life, at some point we all need God. We might pretend that oh, I didn't really need God in my life. But we need God in our life. So it's good to ask ourselves that what is the distance between God and me? And God says, draw near to me, and I will draw myself nearer to you. We can't just go and continue our daily life and expect God to come to us. There's a point where we have to come to Him and say that, God, I am drawing myself near to you. Therefore submit to God, resist the devil, and he'll flee. When we come to submit and drawing ourselves near to God, it is something we should realize that this is what I need in my life. There will always be problems that surround our life that disturbs our daily life. At those points, whom do we approach? Where do we go? This is an important stuff. And how often do we go to God? How often do we draw ourselves close to God? And here it says, cleanse your hands, you sinners. It might be a bit difficult to understand this passage, but the fact is that we are sinners, and if there is something which is not godly in us, God cannot draw near to us. And sin and God cannot stand together. So he said, draw nearer to me, cleanse your hands, take the things that doesn't belong to God, remove those things that doesn't belong to God, and cleanse your hands, you sinners. So at this point, sometimes it's good to know, where do I stand? Do I really need God in my life? And so in order to approach God, God needs a clean hand. We need to clean ourselves. We need to get rid of those things that doesn't belong to Him. It leads me to to Hannah. Hannah, who was barren. You know Hannah, who was barren? Barren, and she really liked to have a child. She really likes to have a child of her own. Where does she go? She goes to temple, prayed there. She prayed so much that even the priest, Eli, thought that she was drunk. She has so much of pain, I should say. She wanted so much, and she was praying, not just a normal prayer. She prayed so hard that people thought that she got drunk. And her prayer was answered, and God gave her a son who is called Samuel. When we look at Samuel, her mom made a promise that if God gave me a son, I will put him into the service of God. And when he was at some age, she sent her son to a temple to stay with the priest Eli. And I was just wondering why this little boy, Samuel, allow himself to be that kind of a person to be in the temple. He himself, I think, has a willingness to do that, to serve the Lord, to go nearer to God. Even though it was a dream and a desire for her mom, who was Hannah, to give the children for the service of the Lord. It might also be the desire of that little boy to do the same thing, to draw himself closer to God. In this age, it's very difficult to force our children to do something which they didn't really like it. Is your children the same? If they say no, it's very difficult to turn them around. My little daughter, Rima, is very fussy about food. Sometimes when we try to force her to eat, she ends up not having anything. That's who they are at this age, our children. I was just thinking, if the little boy Samuel said, no, I don't want to go to the temple to stay there, that might be the end of the story. But even though he was a small boy, I think he has the desire to know more about God. Do we have that kind of a desire in us? God, I want to know more about you. And in the previous verse from chapter 4, it says that you do not have because you do not ask. It sounds so simple. In chapter 4, verse 3, you do not receive it because you do not ask for it. It's asking someone, it's desire. Ask God of the things that you desire. If we really plead to God, God, I want to know more about you. I want to draw closer to you. I want to build a better relationship with you. Can you draw me closer to you? God will definitely draw closer to us. When we continue reading the life of Samuel, what was happening? It was a small boy, was sleeping in the middle of the night. God called him, Samuel, Samuel. Wow. On the other side of the room, priest Eli was sleeping there. God didn't talk to him. God didn't call out his name. Even though he was the priest, even though he was living inside the temple, his path was so far from God that God doesn't bother to call him anymore. Because there was no desire in the life of Eli for God. But that small boy, his whole family was desiring God. And in the middle of the night, God called Samuel, Samuel. He woke up many times and started thinking that Eli might have called him. He go there and say, Master, did you call me? And I said, no, I didn't call you, go back. It happened several times. And Eli was confused. This has to be God. This has to be God. And then God called him again. And he said, when God called him again, he said, God, I am here. What do you have to say? I was just thinking what might have gone through in the mind of the Eli, even though he called himself a priest who offered those sacrifices that people brought unto him. God did not speak to his life. Does God continue to speak in our life? Or when was the last time when God spoke to our life? A week? A month? A year? If we haven't heard anything from God, it might be that we need to draw ourselves closer to God. Sometimes problems help us to draw ourselves closer to God. I don't think anyone in this room would like to have a problem, but sometimes God uses those situations to reveal himself of who he is. About Hannah, he's a barren woman. I'm a man, I never know how a barren woman would think about it. But if a woman is a barren, in those cultures, everybody will speak bad about her. Say, she's a curse. She can't bear a child. So all the negative thought would come to her life as well. What I see is here is being barren is not just a problem. It can also, a problem can also be for not getting close enough to God. A problem is not a problem if God is with us. A small thing can become a problem if God is not with us. A small issues can become a big thing in our life if God is not closer enough to us. The way we see things change depending on the place where we stand. So, being at the feet of Christ, being closer to God, it helps us to see things in a very different way. So, and one more illustration that I want to bring out is about the life of Jacob. I hope you all know Jacob. Who is Jacob? Then, any idea Jacob in the Bible? Keres, Esau and Jacob. Those were twins. What did Jacob do? What was it?
Cheat his brother.
Steal his?
He cheated his brother Solomon.
Yeah, but like, he cheated his brother, kind of cheating, like saying that, he was so, Esau is the older, was older than Jacob. In their culture, the older boy will inherit all the property that belongs to the father. The younger boy doesn't have much, to share from his father's property. So, in one way, Jacob cheated and said he made a good, might be a curry, I don't know, the stew or some food. Esau was so hungry that he wanted to have that food so much that so He said, let's exchange. Give me your birthright, and I'll give you this food. So it was a bit kind of a cheating there, and so he got it, the exchange with food, and he ran away. And with that, he dressed himself like Esau, like putting a fur, and Esau was a bit, hairy person. His father was blind, was Isaac, was blind, and he disguised himself like Esau so that he can get the blessing from his father. And he did that, he cheated, and he get that blessing, and then he ran away there. So when after getting the blessing, he ran away, and at one point he was coming back. On his way back, he went alone, but on his way back, he had a lot of, animals, and a lot of maid, servant and man, and with a lot of children. He was coming back. On the way back, even though he was quite becoming powerful and with a lot of strength, but Esau too has become powerful. Because he cheated on him, Esau was very angry and said that the moment I saw him, I'm going to kill him. That was what he was into it. So Jacob was on his way back, returning home, and was about to meet Jacob. There. He was frightened, he was nervous to meet him, because Esau was not happy with him. So he sent all his animals and made servants. After that, even his wives and children, he sent them away, thinking that in one way or the other, if Esau decided to kill them, they'll kill one by one, and the children will be the last to die. He was in that situation. Sometimes we too, when we think about the future, that the things that is happening around us, we are nervous sometimes. What's going to happen with me? Sometimes, even though we may look quite comfortable and quite relaxed from outside, but inside, sometimes that kind of nervousness is there in us. So I really like this part. Jacob sent everything away that belongs to him to meet Esau. He was left alone. He was left alone there just by himself. No one there around him. And God came and visited him. Sometimes it's good to leave ourselves alone, being left alone. When we are too busy thinking about everything that surrounds us, our mind is so occupied that we don't have any more space for God, so that God could come and interact with us. Sometimes it is good to give ourselves a time out and think about God. Here, God came and he wrestled with Jacob. And it seems that they were wrestling the whole night. I don't know what, I was just thinking, God and man, if they wrestle, can a man really be God if they're really fighting or wrestling? I was just thinking, it's just God pretending something here. Because if you want, he can be Jacob. But what I see is that he wants so much blessing from God that he gave everything wrestling with God. Because he knew that God is his answer. Because Esau is coming. Esau is too big for him to face alone. But he knows that if God is with him, he can turn things around. Is your problem bigger than God? But if God is not bigger than your problem will always be bigger than God. If God is not in the right place in our life, the problem will be always bigger than the mountain. So for Jacob, before meeting Esau, he has to meet God. Before facing your problem, draw yourself closer to God. Esau was coming to kill him. So sometimes it is good to see that how much is my desire to know more about God. The whole night he was wrestling with God. Have you ever had a whole night prayer meeting? What will be the longest prayer that you have ever prayed? 5 minutes? He wrestled with God the whole night. You know, when we prayed, sometimes I used to say that, oh, let me pray. I prayed. I thought I prayed 3 hours. When I look at the time, it's only 10 minutes. Something like that. But here, Jacob wrestled with God. He didn't wrestle with Esau. He wrestled with God. That's an important lesson that we need to learn, is that the problems that lie there is not really a problem. It is with God. Where do I stand? Where am I? Am I close to God or am I far away from God? That makes much difference. The problem you see will not be a problem if you stay close to God. And he didn't want to let him go until he blessed him. And he said, I'm not going to leave you until you bless me. Oh, we don't know when he's going to bless them. But his decision is that I'm not going to let you go until you sow or you bless me. So, I think the desire to have a blessing from God drives him. And he really wanted a blessing from God. If I'm not about to ask for a blessing from God, if I say, God bless me, what particularly do I really mean? Bless my family. Might be, oh, I need financial help, give me some money. That can be a blessing. Or I may say that, oh, I need to renovate my house and, help me do that. Or I may say that I need a new car, give me that. That may be a kind of a blessing that I'm looking about. You know what happened when God blessed Jacob? In what way did God bless Jacob? Zoom here, any idea? He changed his name. That's the blessing. Okay, from now on, you will no longer be Margaret, you're going to be Mary. That's my blessing. What kind of blessing is that? I'm going to change, like bless you, you are now going to be Matthew. You might be some other else. What does that really make difference? But the names mean in those days, like the name of Israel means that God prevailed. God prevailed. Jacob is a name which is like a cheetah. In the Old Testament time, their name reflect their character, who they are. And he said, from now on, your name will no longer be a cheetah. You're going to be a name, Israel, which means God's prevail. That's a blessing. The blessing is that from now on, you are not going to, just be by yourself. God is going to be behind your back. It is God who is going to take control of your life. It is God who is going to make your way clearer. It's not about the financial, it's not about the wealth. It's about the presence of God that God has promised on him. I am going to be with you. That is the kind of a blessings that we need. When God changed his name from Jacob to Esau, or Jacob to Israel, when he went and met Esau, what happened? Esau was there with open heart, receiving his brother. He set out from his house having the intention to kill Jacob, but he ended up hugging him. What change has come up? Sometimes we cannot just fight the problem just by ourselves. When we draw close to him, I think when he was wrestling with God, God changed the heart of Esau. He turns it around. So the things which we can see is that God wants us to help us out with the problems, with the struggles that we are fighting. We are fighting with our life. God wants to help us. But unless we draw ourselves closer to him, he cannot help us. Because of the sin that remains in us. He said, wash your hand, clean yourself, get rid of the sinful things. Come to me, let me help you. I think this is what it means that no. God says that you are in such a place where I can't just come. You need to come up to me so that I can help you. It can be like a person who's drowned there, or and someone who needs help. Until we say that, oh, I need help, people might not come and help us. If you find someone on the street, if you try to help them, they might say that, oh, I don't need your help. If a person doesn't think that he needs help, we can't just go and help them. The same thing, if you don't feel that you need God in your life, God will not force you to help him, to make himself known to us. So I think here what we see is that draw yourself near to me. And God says that draw near to God and he will draw near to you. It's always good to see where we stand with God. Even though we are sinners, we are not perfect. God wants to draw himself near to God. The life that you live, God knows better than what you are living with. So let us try to, think about our life and say that I call myself a Christian, a believer. Am I close enough to God where God can speak into our life? I really like the song which we just sang. I speak Jesus. I speak Jesus is saying like, it's not just like taking the name of Jesus, like saying that Jesus, it's you who I need in my life. God, it is you whom I'm longing for. It's not just about the blessing, but the desire to be with Jesus. I take it as like, I love to be with my children. I may not get anything from them. They might not be able to cook for me. All what they could do is to bring a glass of water.
but I enjoy being with them.
It's about Jesus, the longingness, the desire that we have for Jesus that can that can change our life. So I think let's go away having these questions in our heart, and with this verse saying that, God says that, it says that draw near to God and He will draw near to you. Let's go away with the saying that, God wants me to draw near to Him so that He can draw Himself nearer to me. And God is always the person who takes care of us and help us to in our struggles. Thank you.